The ad said the rent was too good to be true. Daniel Marsh knew this, the way you know a scratch ticket is a loser before you even peel the foil. A cold, certain knowing somewhere behind the ribs. But he was 3 weeks from being evicted. His savings account had exactly $41 in it, and the photo in the listing showed a spacious 2-bedroom apartment with hardwood floors and tall windows overlooking a quiet street. Furnished, utilities included, move in immediately. The price was less than half of anything else in the city. He called the number. The landlord, a man named Mr. Callow, had a voice like paper tearing, dry, unhurried. He told Daniel that the apartment had been vacant for a while being the exact phrase he used, with no further elaboration. He told Daniel there was no application, no credit check, no first and last month's deposit required. Just sign the lease and move in. "Why no deposit?" Daniel asked. There was a pause on the other end of the line, long enough that Daniel pulled the phone away from his ear to check if the call had dropped. "Previous tenants always left in a hurry," Mr. Callow said. "They never took everything. The apartment is already furnished. It seems unfair to ask for more." Daniel should have heard the warning in that. He heard a bargain instead. He moved in on a Thursday, which he would later think about often. Thursdays are midweek, unremarkable days. No one plans anything important for a Thursday. No one thinks of it as the day their life divided into before and after. The building was a narrow brownstone on Aldric Street, wedged between a shuttered laundromat and a Vietnamese restaurant that was always, at every hour Daniel passed it, inexplicably closed. The building had 6 units. Daniel was on the 4th floor. The elevator didn't work. The stairwell smelled of old water and something beneath that, something organic and sweet, like fruit left to go soft. The walls of the stairwell were painted an institutional gloom that had long since yellowed, and someone had scratched words into the plaster at the 2nd floor landing. Daniel paused to read them on his way up with his first box. "Don't look at it." He assumed it was graffiti. He kept climbing. The apartment itself was, genuinely, beautiful. This surprised him. He had steeled himself for disappointment, for water-stained ceilings and broken fixtures, but the space was warm and high-ceilinged, with those tall windows flooding the living room in afternoon light. The furniture was old but well-made. A dark wooden dining table, a velvet couch the color of dried blood, bookshelves along every wall packed with novels and encyclopedias. The kitchen had a gas stove. The bedroom had a queen mattress wrapped in a plastic cover, which was the only thing that struck him as slightly odd. He pulled the plastic off the mattress and shoved it under the bed. That first night, he slept deeply and without dreams. He told himself this was a good sign. He noticed the door on the 2nd day. Not the door to his apartment, a door inside his apartment. At the far end of the hallway, past the bathroom, past the 2nd bedroom he planned to use as an office, there was a door he hadn't noticed during his walkthrough. It was narrower than the other doors, and painted over, caked with so many layers of old white paint that the hinges were nearly buried, and the handle was a simple brass knob worn smooth from use. He tried the knob. It didn't turn. He knocked on the door, feeling slightly foolish, and listened. On the other side, nothing. No sound. Not even the ambient hiss of pipes or the distant bass of a neighbor's music. Just a silence so complete it felt pressurized, like the silence inside an ear pressed to a wall. He called Mr. Callow. "Ah," the landlord said. That was all. Just, "ah." "What's behind it?" Daniel asked. "Storage," said Mr. Callow. "Old storage room. Sealed up years ago. There's nothing in it worth accessing." Another pause. "I'd leave it alone if I were you. The floor on the other side is unsound." Daniel said he understood. He thanked the landlord and hung up. He stood in the hallway and looked at the door for a long moment. Then he went and made dinner and tried not to think about the way Mr. Callow had said, "ah." like a man who had been expecting a specific question and had his answer ready. The noises started on the fourth night. Not loud noises. That's what made them so difficult to dismiss. A loud noise can be explained. A neighbor, a pipe, the building settling. These were soft noises. Precise noises. The first was a sound like a fingernail being drawn slowly across the other side of a door. Daniel was in bed, almost asleep, when he heard it. He lay still, eyes open in the dark, and listened. It came again. A single, deliberate scritch. The sound of something hard and pointed tracing a line across wood. It was coming from the hallway. He got up. He turned on every light between the bedroom and the hallway. He stood at the end of the hall and looked at the sealed door. Nothing. Silence. He went back to bed and did not sleep for 2 hours. The second night it happened, he heard breathing. Not breathing exactly, more like the rhythm of breathing. A slow, measured expansion and contraction of air, just barely audible, like someone on the other side of the door was pressing their mouth to the gap at the base and exhaling, very slowly, very deliberately. Daniel sat up in bed and counted the breaths. 1, 2, 3. After the third breath, silence. He did not go look at the door this time. He pulled the blanket up to his chin and lay in the dark and told himself he was going to leave in the morning. He was going to call Mr. Callow and break the lease and find somewhere else to live, $41 in all. He did not leave in the morning. This is the part that would later be hardest to explain, even to himself, the way the urgency faded with daylight. He woke to sun through the tall windows, coffee brewing, a perfectly ordinary Thursday morning, and the sealed door at the end of the hall seemed small and explicable. Old building, old pipes, rats maybe, or pigeons nesting in the walls. He had 2 boxes still to unpack. He had his first week of work coming up. He stayed. On the 6th day, he met the woman from the 3rd floor. He was coming up the stairwell with groceries when she appeared at the landing below, a small woman, somewhere in her 60s, wearing a housecoat and reading glasses pushed up on her forehead. She had the look of someone who hadn't slept well in a long time, the particular grayness around the eyes, the slight tremor at the corners of the mouth. "You're the new one," she said. "Daniel," he said. "Daniel Marsh, 4th floor." She looked at him the way you look at a man walking toward a cliff who doesn't know it's there. Not with alarm exactly, with a kind of resigned grief. "Elsa Van," she said. "3rd floor. How long have you been in that apartment?" 6 days. She nodded slowly. "And have you found the door yet?" The groceries suddenly felt very heavy. "The storage room," he said. "Yes, locked." "Not a storage room." She said it quietly, flatly, as though correcting a minor point of geography. "Never a storage room. That's what Callow tells everyone." She peered up at him through her reading glasses. "Have you heard anything? From behind it?" He didn't want to answer that. He found he answered anyway. "Scratching," he said, "and breathing. I thought it was pipes." Elsa Van looked at him for a long moment. "You should come have tea," she said. Her apartment was dense with plants and books and cats. 3 cats that materialized and vanished around Daniel's ankles while she made tea in a kitchen that smelled of chamomile and old wood. She set 2 cups on a small table by the window and sat across from him with the careful posture of someone who had decided to say something difficult and was arranging themselves for it. "I have lived in this building for 11 years, she said. "In that time, there have been 7 tenants in your apartment. 7. Daniel did the math. That's a lot. 2 left within the first 2 weeks. Wouldn't say why, just left. Boxes half-packed, some of them. two stayed long enough to start changing. She wrapped both hands around her teacup. They got very quiet, stopped leaving the apartment. When I saw them in the hall, they wouldn't look at me. They'd look at the wall or the floor. One of them, a young woman, she was a graduate student, I passed her on the stairs one morning and she turned her face to the plaster like she was trying to press herself into it. I said her name. She didn't respond. 2 days later, she was gone. Gone where? Gone. Elsa Van said it simply. Mr. Callow cleaned the apartment, put the new furniture in, he does this every time, and put up the listing.
Daniel turned his teacup in his hands. "What's behind the door, Mrs. Van?" She was quiet for a moment. "I don't know," she said at last. "And I mean that literally. I don't know, and I have decided very deliberately not to find out. What I know is what I have observed. The tenants who leave early, the frightened ones, they leave intact. The tenants who stay?" She trailed off. "What about them?" "They stop being afraid," she said. "That's the last thing they feel, I think. Fear. And then something else takes its place. Something that looks, from the outside, like calm, or like fascination. And then they're gone." She looked at him directly. "Whatever is behind that door, Daniel, it doesn't want to frighten you. That's just the beginning. What it wants, I think, is to interest you." He went back upstairs with the cold certainty that he should leave. He stood in his apartment and looked at his boxes, 2 still unpacked, and his books on the shelves that weren't his, and the velvet couch the color of dried blood, and he thought, "I'll leave tomorrow. I'll sleep on a friend's floor. I'll figure it out." He walked down the hall to look at the door one more time. He didn't know why. He just wanted to look at it. That was all. It was a perfectly ordinary door, paint-sealed, brass knob. He stood 2 feet from it and looked at it. And then, very quietly, something knocked. Not scratched, not breathed, knocked. 3 even knocks, as though someone on the other side were politely requesting entry, or announcing their presence, or demonstrating, quite deliberately, that they were aware of him standing there, on this side, looking at the door. Daniel's hand moved toward the knob. He caught himself, stepped back, pressed himself against the opposite wall. "No," he said, out loud, to the door, to the apartment, to himself. The door said nothing. He went back to the living room and turned on every light and the television, and did not go down the hall again that night. He found the name of the building in a newspaper archive. It took him 3 days of searching, evenings after work, laptop open on the kitchen table, as far from the hallway as he could get while still being in the apartment. He told himself he was just being informed, just doing due diligence. He would find a rational explanation, and then he would leave. The building was called the Aldric Arms in older documents. Built in 1908, changed hands several times. In 1947, there had been an incident. The archive didn't elaborate on the nature of the incident. It said only that the building had been temporarily vacated by order of the city, following events on the 4th floor that were under investigation. The investigation had apparently concluded without charges or explanation. 3 months later, the building was reoccupied. He found a second article from 1961 about a man named Theodore Plum who had been found dead in his apartment on Aldric Street. The cause of death was listed as cardiac arrest. He was 34 years old. Healthy, by all accounts, until he wasn't. The article mentioned that neighbors had observed him acting strangely in the days before his death, standing in the hallway of the building at odd hours, staring at the wall. The article was 1 paragraph. It wasn't even on the front page. He found a photograph.
It was from a local features piece, 1978, about historic buildings of the neighborhood, the sort of soft journalism that fills the back pages of local papers. The photograph showed the brownstone on Aldric Street. Standing in front of it, looking up at the building's face, was Mr. Callow. Daniel stared at the photograph for a long time. Mr. Callow looked, in the 1978 photograph, exactly as he had sounded on the phone. Exactly as Daniel would have imagined him. A thin man in a dark suit, with the kind of still, vertical posture that suggested someone who did not fidget or laugh easily. The photograph was black and white, but Daniel felt certain, looking at it, that Mr. Callow's suit would have been dark gray or charcoal, that his eyes would have been a pale, flat color, that his hands, folded in front of him, would have been very still. He saved the photograph. He closed the laptop. He went and stood in the kitchen and breathed through his nose until his heart slowed down. Elsa Van had said she'd lived here for 11 years. She had watched 7 tenants come and go from the 4th floor. 11 years and 7 tenants. Mr. Callow had been photographed in front of this building in 1978. 47 years ago. He called Elsa Van's number. She had given him a slip of paper with it, pressing it into his palm with both hands, saying, "Please use it." And she answered on the second ring. "How old is Mr. Callow?" he asked. A long pause. "I've never met him," she said. "I've only heard him on the phone, or seen letters with his name on them." "Have any of your neighbors met him in person?" Another pause. "Not that I know of." Daniel described the photograph. Elsa was quiet for a moment after he finished. "Daniel," she said carefully, "I want you to pack a bag tonight. Just one bag, whatever you need for a week. And I want you to sleep down here on my couch. And in the morning, I want you to leave the building." "Mrs. Van." "You are at the stage where it becomes interesting," she said. "Do you understand what I'm telling you? You are starting to investigate. That's what they all do, the ones who don't leave in the first week. They start digging, and the digging feels purposeful and important. And before they know it, they have convinced themselves that understanding the thing is the same as being safe from it." Her voice was very steady, very deliberate. "It is not the same thing. Please, pack a bag." He sat with the phone in his hand for a long moment. "Tomorrow," he said. "I'll pack tomorrow." He heard her exhale. "Good night, Daniel," she said. And he could hear in her voice that she did not expect this story to end well. He didn't sleep that night. Not because of sounds. The apartment was completely silent. More silent than it had been on any of the previous nights. And somehow, this was worse. At least the scratching was something he could orient himself against. This silence was like being watched by something that had decided it didn't need to announce itself anymore. He lay in the dark and thought about the graduate student who had pressed her face to the plaster. He thought about Theodore Plum, found dead at 34, healthy until he wasn't. He thought about the word interest, the way Elsa Van had used it. What it wants is to interest you. He was interested. He could feel it in his chest like a hook, the wanting to know. At 3 a.m, he got up. He told himself he was going to the kitchen for water. He told himself this, the way you tell yourself you're just going to check your phone one more time before sleep. He walked down the hall. He stopped in front of the sealed door. He stood there for what might have been 5 minutes or might have been 20. The door was still, quiet. And yet standing this close to it, in the dark, he had the overwhelming sensation of proximity, of something very close on the other side of the thin wood. Not moving, just there, just present. He thought, I could go back to bed.
He thought, I could leave right now, bag or no bag. He thought, I just want to see. He reached out and took hold of the brass knob. It turned. He would remember later that this was the moment he should have run. Not when he heard it turn, not the soft click of a mechanism releasing, but the moment before. The moment where he registered that the knob, which had not turned 6 days ago, was turning now. And instead of fear, he felt relief, a loosening in his chest, as though the question that had been building for 6 days was finally going to be answered. That loosening, that was the thing to have been afraid of. He pushed the door open. The room on the other side was dark. Not the ordinary dark of an unlit room. The light from the hallway fell through the doorway, but seemed to stop at the threshold, as though absorbed, as though the room itself were drinking it. He could see, just barely, that the room was small, a closet almost, and that it was empty. And that at the far end of it, something was standing. He could not see it clearly. He was not sure later that see was the right word for whatever happened in that room. What he had was an impression, the way you have an impression of something at the edge of sleep, more felt than seen, more known than observed. It was tall. It occupied the back wall of the room without quite touching the floor. It had the general silhouette of a person, in the way that a shadow has the silhouette of whatever cast it, approximately, suggestively, but with something lost in translation, something missing or added. It was very still, and it was looking at him. Not with eyes. He couldn't have said it had eyes, but with attention. Total, focused, consuming attention. He felt it the way you feel the sun on your face through a window, a warmth that was not quite warmth, a weight, a pressure behind the eyes. He thought distantly that he should close the door. He thought, it's not so bad. He thought, it's actually kind of beautiful. He stepped forward. The cat saved him. He would have laughed at this if he'd been in any condition to laugh. That after everything, after all the dread and investigation and warning, the thing that saved him was one of Elsa Van's cats, which had followed him up the stairs in the night and now appeared at his heel and bit him, sharply and without warning, on the back of the ankle. The pain was small and bright and sudden, and it snapped him back into himself the way a glass of cold water snaps you back from a dream. He looked at the cat. The cat looked at him. Its eyes were very wide. It was making no sound. Daniel looked back at the room. He could no longer see the shape at the far end. Or he could see it. He was aware of it. But some quality of the compulsion had broken, the way a spell breaks when you stop believing in it. And what was left was not fascination, but something cold and high and very clear. He took hold of the door, and he pulled it shut. He walked down the hall, picked up the cat, went into the bedroom, put on his shoes, picked up his wallet and his keys and his phone from the nightstand. He picked up the cat again. He left the apartment. He did not take a bag. He knocked on Elsa Vaughn's door until she opened it, blinking in the hallway light with her reading glasses still on her face. And he said, "I need to use your couch." She stepped aside without a word and let him in. The cat disappeared into the apartment. He called Mr. Callow in the morning, sitting at Elsa Vaughn's kitchen table with coffee growing cold in front of him. The phone rang 6 times. He was composing the voicemail in his head when the call connected. "Mr. Marsh," said the paper-tearing voice. Not hello, not yes, just his name, as though Mr. Callow had been sitting by the phone, waiting. "I'm leaving," Daniel said. "I'm breaking the lease." "Of course," said Mr. Callow. He sounded unsurprised. He sounded, if anything, gently resigned.
There is no penalty for early termination. As I said, the previous tenants always left in a hurry. "What is it?" Daniel said. "What's in that room?" A long silence. "I've lived in this building a very long time," Mr. Callow said at last. "It was here when I arrived. It will be here when I'm gone. I have learned to coexist." A pause. "Not everyone can."
What happened to the ones who couldn't? Another silence, longer this time. They became very calm, said Mr. Callow. At the end. Peaceful, I would even say. They didn't suffer. Daniel thought about the graduate student pressing her face to the plaster. "I'm leaving," he said again. "I know," said Mr. Callow. "Leave the key on the kitchen counter. The next tenant has already inquired." Daniel sat with the dead phone in his hand for a moment. Then he got up and walked out of the building for the last time. He stood on the sidewalk on Aldric Street in the pale early morning light. The Vietnamese restaurant next door was, as always, inexplicably closed. A pigeon walked across the pavement with the studied indifference of pigeons everywhere. He looked up at the fourth-floor window. He told himself he wouldn't. He told himself that looking was exactly what you weren't supposed to do. He'd read it on the wall, scratched into the plaster at the second-floor landing. Don't look at it. He looked anyway. The window was empty, just glass and the reflection of the gray morning sky. But for one moment, just one, he thought he saw something at the edge of the frame. A shape retreating from the glass, tall and approximate, and wrong in the way shadows are wrong at certain hours, too long or leaning the wrong direction, or behaving as though the light that casts it is coming from a place you can't see. He turned and walked away. He did not run. He had the feeling, very clearly, that running was what it wanted, that any display of fear was a kind of invitation, a kind of engagement. He walked steadily all the way to the end of the block, and then around the corner. And then he sat down on the steps of a stranger's stoop and put his face in his hands and breathed. After a while, he took his hands away from his face. The street was ordinary. People walked past. A bus wheezed to a stop. Somewhere, a dog barked. The world was not different. He was the one who was different. He took out his phone and opened his contacts. He called a friend and asked if he could sleep on a couch. He made 2 more calls to apartments. He would figure it out. He had before. He did not look back toward Aldrich Street.
6 weeks later, he received an email from an address he didn't recognize. The subject line was blank. The body of the email contained a single link to a rental listing. The photograph showed a spacious 2-bedroom apartment with hardwood floors and tall windows overlooking a quiet street. Furnished, utilities included, move in immediately. The price was less than half of anything else in the city. Daniel deleted the email. He did not click the link. He told himself, for several months, that he was certain about that.